My name is Sophia Reynolds. I turned 62 last spring. 6 months ago, I stood in relentless Chicago rain at Oakwood Cemetery on the south side, staring at a polished black granite headstone that read, Victor Reynolds. 1958 to 2025. Beloved husband and father. Gone too soon. I stayed until my black wool coat was soaked through to the skin, until my fingers went numb tracing the carved letters over and over, until the groundskeeper touched my elbow gently and said the gates were closing soon. I buried my husband of 41 years. The man who proposed to me on Navy Pier in 1983 while fireworks exploded over Lake Michigan and he whispered, "You're the only forever I want." The man who held me through 2 miscarriages when doctors said we might never have children, through my father's long battle with cancer, through every quiet crisis and loud celebration life handed us. Or so I believed. The crash happened on I-94 during a brutal January blizzard. Semi-truck lost control on black ice. His SUV crushed like aluminum foil. Police said the body was unrecognizable. My son Ryan agreed immediately. Closed casket is kinder, Mom. You don't want that last image burned in your head. I trusted him. I trusted everyone. 6 months of hollow mornings followed. Waking to silence where his snoring used to rumble like distant thunder. Making coffee for one in the kitchen we remodeled together in 2005, the one with the granite island where we used to argue over who left the milk out. Eating toast alone at that island, staring at the empty chair across from me. Nights clutching his pillow, breathing in the faint trace of Old Spice that clung to the fabric like a ghost refusing to leave. Learning how to exist in a house that still echoed with his footsteps on the hardwood floors, his laugh in the hallway, his keys hitting the bowl by the door every evening at 6:15. That Tuesday morning, grief didn't pause for errands. The refrigerator light glared accusingly when I opened it, empty shelves staring back. Normal life doesn't stop, even when yours has ended. I drove to the Marianos in Hyde Park, pushed the cart past gleaming pyramids of apples and oranges, past families bickering over cereal brands, past teenagers glued to phones. Everything felt too loud, too bright, too alive for someone who hadn't felt truly alive in half a year. I stopped in aisle 7, pasta sauces. Reached for our usual Rouse marinara, the one Victor always said tastes like Nana made it even though we're not Italian. That's when I heard it. A cough. Low, habitual, the one that always came after he cleared his throat too fast while reading the Tribune opinion page. Then his voice, quiet grumble about prices going through the damn roof these days. Exact dry, slightly amused tone. The one I'd heard for decades drifting from the den while he folded the paper just so, corners crisp, edges flat. My fingers tightened on the jar. Glass suddenly cold against slick palm. The aisle lights seemed to flicker. I turned slowly. Heart already racing so hard I tasted copper in my mouth, like biting my tongue. There he was. 4 shelves down. Holding a red handbasket. Squinting at nutrition labels like he always did, muttering about sodium and who needs this much salt anyway. Victor. Same tall frame, now slightly rounded at the shoulders with age. Same thick silver hair that never quite stayed combed no matter how much gel he used. Same faint scar above his right eyebrow from slipping on black ice outside our old Evanston house in '98. He used to joke it was his pirate mark and wink at me across the dinner table. The man I mourned. The man whose name was etched in granite. The man whose ashes I thought were scattered over Lake Michigan because I couldn't bear a burial plot that felt too permanent. The jar slipped from my fingers. Exploded on the tile with a wet crack. Red sauce sprayed across white floors like arterial blood, pooling around my shoes. Shoppers gasped. A teenage stock boy in a green apron rushed over. "Ma'am? You all right? Let me get a mop and some paper towels." I couldn't answer. My legs moved on their own. "Victor." A whisper that cracked in my throat. Then louder, voice splintering like thin ice. "Victor." He turned. For one endless heartbeat his gray eyes locked on mine. Recognition flashed, raw, terrified, unmistakable. Then it vanished. Replaced by careful, practiced confusion. "Excuse me," he said gently, "the way you speak to someone fragile. I think you've mistaken me for someone else." Those words landed like a slap across the face. 41 years. Every wrinkle I kissed goodnight. Every laugh line I traced in the dark when he thought I was asleep. Every quiet "I love you" whispered against my neck after the lights went out. Mistaken. No, I stepped forward, voice trembling but rising. "It's me. Sophia. Your wife." He took one small step back. That single retreat cut deeper than any scream ever could. Victor never backed away from me. Not once. Not even during our worst fights over money or Ryan's teenage rebellion or my mother's endless opinions. "My name is Michael Harlan," he said slowly, carefully, like he was talking to a child who might break. "I don't know you. I'm sorry." I yanked my phone from my purse. Hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it twice. Opened our last photo, his birthday last July. Porch swing in the backyard. His arm around my shoulders. Both of us laughing at something stupid the neighbor's golden retriever did. "Look." Held it out between us like evidence in a courtroom. "Look at this. You overcooked the burgers that day. Blamed the propane tank. Remember?" He glanced at the screen. Jaw clenched, just a flicker. Eyes narrowed for half a heartbeat. Then he shook his head. "I'm truly sorry," he repeated. "You must be dealing with something very painful. Maybe get some help? Sit down. I'll get you some water from the cooler." He reached out. Touched my shoulder. That hand. Same calluses from weekend woodworking in the garage. Same gentle pressure he'd used a million times to calm me when the world felt too heavy. I stared at his left hand. The crooked pinky, broken at 15 falling off his parents' barn roof in Wisconsin. The one I'd teased him about for decades, kissing it every time we held hands in the movies or walking the dog. "Show me your hand," I demanded. He frowned but lifted it. Pinky bent exactly the same way. My stomach plummeted through the floor. "I have to go," he muttered, already turning his basket away. "Take care of yourself, ma'am." He walked off toward the registers. I stood frozen amid broken glass and red sauce. The stock boy cleaning quietly beside me. People whispering as they passed. Poor woman, hallucinating her dead husband. They were wrong. I wasn't hallucinating. I was awake for the first time in 6 months. Because if Victor was alive and shopping for pasta in Chicago, who the hell had I buried 6 months ago? And why did my own son help him disappear? I should have walked away right there in that aisle, surrounded by broken glass and spilled sauce. I should have gone straight home, locked every door and window, called my doctor or my therapist, and told myself that 6 months of unrelenting grief had finally cracked something inside my mind. That would have been the sane choice. The safe choice. The choice a 62-year-old widow is supposed to make when reality starts to bend. But sanity felt like surrender. And something deeper than grief, something colder, sharper, was already waking up inside me. I watched him finish at the self-checkout. Cash again. He counted bills with the same deliberate care Victor always used, folding each one neatly, pressing the edges flat with his thumb before sliding them into the machine. Victor hated loose change in his pocket. This man clearly felt the same way. He loaded the bags into the trunk of a faded gray Honda Civic. There was a small dent on the rear quarter panel, the kind that happens when someone backs into a pole in a parking lot and never bothers to fix it. Not Victor's sleek black Lexus he washed every Sunday morning like it was a ritual. But the way he placed the bags, heavy cans and jars first, bread on top so it wouldn't crush, eggs cradled last in their carton. Identical. Every movement practiced, automatic, the same quiet efficiency I'd watched for 4 decades. I didn't think. My feet just followed. I memorized the license plate as he pulled out of the lot, Illinois AVN 4721. I got into my car, the silver Toyota Camry Victor bought me 2 years before the accident, saying "I want you safe, soft, always safe." I pulled out 3 cars behind him, keeping just enough distance not to be obvious, close enough not to lose him in traffic. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. My hand shook on the wheel. I kept telling myself to turn around at the next light. I didn't. We headed north on Lakeshore Drive. Past the Museum of Science and Industry, past the curve where you can see the skyline glittering even on a gray day. Then off onto side streets in Rogers Park. The houses got smaller, older, more modest, bungalows with chain-link fences, mature oak trees, kids' bikes on driveways. He turned onto a quiet block off Sheridan Road. Parked in front of a soft gray 2-flat with white trim. Small front yard. Window boxes full of geraniums even in late summer. An American flag hanging from the porch rail, moving gently in the breeze. Wind chimes tinkled softly near the door. The front door opened before he even reached the steps. A woman stepped out, late 50s, warm brown hair pulled into a loose bun, cardigan over jeans, no makeup. The kind of face that looks kind even when it's tired. She smiled wide when she saw him. Not a polite smile. A real one. The kind reserved for someone coming home. She leaned in and kissed his cheek. Took one of the grocery bags from his hand. Said something soft. I couldn't hear the words from where I sat half a block away, windows up, engine idling, but I saw the way she touched his arm, familiar, easy, comfortable. Then 2 children burst through the doorway. A girl, maybe 8, dark braids flying. A boy around 10, baseball cap backward. "Grandpa Mike," the girl shouted, voice carrying on the breeze. "Did you get the Rocky Road ice cream?" He laughed. That crooked, warm laugh that started low in his chest and rolled out like summer thunder. The laugh I used to hear every Sunday morning while he made pancakes and pretended not to burn the bacon. He crouched down. Let them tackle him in a hug. Balanced the remaining grocery bags effortlessly while they climbed on him like he was a jungle gym. The woman watched, smiling, her hand resting lightly on his back. They all turned and went inside together. The door closed with a soft click. I sat frozen in my car, parked crookedly half a block away, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The afternoon sun streamed through the windshield, warming my face. Only then did I realize tears were sliding silently down my cheeks. 41 years of marriage. Vows exchanged in front of 200 people at St. Edith's Church. Anniversaries celebrated with cheap wine and expensive promises. Nights holding each other through storms, literal and otherwise. And he was here. Alive. Grandpa Mike. With another family. Another life. I lifted my phone with shaking hands. Took photos through the windshield. The house number on the mailbox. The gray Honda's license plate again. His face as he turned toward the door, profile sharp in the sunlight. Some photos came out blurry, my hands wouldn't stay steady. But a few were clear enough. As the light began to fade and the streetlights flickered on, I started the car. Drove away slowly, like I was afraid to make any sudden movement. I don't remember much of the drive home. Only sitting in the garage afterward, engine off, staring at the dashboard clock until the numbers blurred. I opened the photos. Zoomed in on his face again and again. Every line matched. The scar. The mole on the side of his neck he always hated because it made him self-conscious in photographs. The way he tilted his head when listening to someone, like he was giving them his full attention. No twin shares childhood injury scars. No stranger memorizes the exact way you load groceries. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table under a single lamp, the rest of the house swallowed in darkness. Old photo albums spread open like evidence at a crime scene. Our wedding day, me in white lace, him in a rented tux, both of us so young we thought forever was guaranteed. Vacations in Door County. Ryan's high school graduation. Victor's 50th birthday party in our backyard. I compared them to the photos I'd taken that afternoon. Identical. I paced the house until my feet ached. The rooms felt foreign. Our home, his home, suddenly felt like a stage set built on a lie. At 4:17 a.m., I picked up my phone and called Ryan. He answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. "Mom? Do you know what time it is? I need you to come over. Right now." "Mom, it's the middle of the night. Did something happen?" "Yes," I said. "Something happened." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mom, if this is about Dad again, we talked about this. You've been through a lot. Grief can do strange things to people." "I saw him yesterday," I said. "I saw your father alive." Silence. Then a sharp, controlled breath. "Mom, what did you take? Did you miss your medication?" "I followed him home, Ryan. I saw where he lives. I saw his family." My voice didn't shake. That seemed to scare him more than anything. "Stay there," he said finally. "Don't go anywhere." "I'm coming." The call ended. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair pulled back without care. A face that looked older than it had 6 months ago. When Ryan arrived 40 minutes later, he didn't knock. He let himself in with the key he's had since he was 16. He found me back at the kitchen table, surrounded by open albums and my phone. "Mom," he said softly. "What is going on?" I didn't speak. I just handed him my phone. I watched his face as he scrolled through the photos. At first confusion. Then disbelief. Then something else. Fear. He swallowed hard. Handed the phone back. "He looks like Dad," he said carefully. "But people resemble each other. It happens." "Did you see his hand?" I asked. "The finger." Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. "Mom, we buried Dad. You were there. I was there. Everyone was there. Closed casket, I said quietly. He looked away. They said it was better that way. The accident was bad. Did you see his body, Ryan? His jaw tightened. No, he whispered. Neither did I. The room felt suddenly very small. I want to go back there, I said, standing up. I want you to come with me. Mom, this is not healthy. This is grief talking. Are you coming or am I going alone? He hesitated long enough for the truth to begin cracking through the surface of his face. Fine, he said finally. We'll go so you can see that it's not him. So you can let this go. We left in silence. As we turned onto the quiet street with the soft gray 2-flat, my heart began to race again. That's the one, I said. Ryan parked a short distance away. We sat there watching. After a few minutes, the front door opened. The man stepped out, coat on, briefcase in hand. Ryan leaned forward. The color drained from his face. He stared unmoving as the man walked to the car and drove past us. When I looked at my son, tears were streaming down his cheeks. Mom, he whispered. In that moment, before he said another word, I knew whatever truth he had been carrying was finally breaking him too. Ryan didn't start the car. He sat there gripping the steering wheel, forehead pressed against it, shoulders shaking in silent, wrenching sobs. I'd seen my son cry before, when his first marriage fell apart after 5 years, when his dog Max died at 14, when the warehouse business hit a rough patch and he thought he'd lose everything Victor built. But never like this. This wasn't grief. This was collapse. This was a man watching the foundation he'd stood on crumble into dust. Mom, he choked out finally, voice thick and broken. I'm so sorry. Those 3 words landed with terrifying clarity. Sorry meant guilt. Sorry meant knowledge. Sorry meant this nightmare wasn't just in my head. Tell me, I said. My voice sounded distant even to my own ears, flat and calm in a way that frightened me. Tell me right now. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were red, raw, filled with something I'd never seen in them before. Shame. Dad didn't die in that accident, he whispered. I nodded once. Some part of me had already crossed into a place where shock could no longer reach. Go on. He took a deep, shuddering breath, like someone preparing to dive into freezing water. He had another family. For over 22 years. Claudia, the woman you saw, he split his time between you and her. It started as an affair in 2002. A supplier conference in Milwaukee. He said it was a mistake at first, then it just never ended. I stared straight ahead at the quiet street, at the soft gray 2-flat with its geraniums and wind chimes. The flag on the porch moved gently in the night breeze. How long did you know? I asked. For years, he admitted, voice cracking. I found out by accident. I was helping him with paperwork at the warehouse, tax forms, utility bills for the office. Duplicate everything. 2 addresses. 2 insurance policies. 2 lives. The warehouse. The supply business he started in our garage in 1995. The one that kept him traveling 3 weeks out of every month. The one I defended to friends when they asked why he was never home. He's building something for us, I'd say. He works hard. And all those years, he was building something else entirely. You stayed silent, I said. It wasn't a question. He begged me not to tell you, Ryan whispered. Said it would destroy you. Said if you found out and divorced him, you'd take half the business, half the house, half the savings. Everything he'd worked for. Everything we worked for. Everything we built, I corrected quietly. He nodded miserably, tears dripping onto his jeans. 6 months ago, he came to me with a plan. He said he wanted to end the double life. Be with Claudia full-time. Retire early, move in here permanently. But a divorce would cost too much, financially, legally, emotionally. So he decided it would be easier if you thought he was dead. My hands began to shake in my lap. I clasped them together to stop it. Easier for whom? I asked. For him, Ryan said. And, for me. I turned sharply. The dashboard lights cast harsh shadows on his face. For you? He looked away, out the windshield at the empty street. If he died, everything passed to me automatically. The business assets. The accounts. The life insurance. He transferred most of the money first, quietly, under a new name. The rest came to me as beneficiary. I thought I could take care of you. Give you an allowance. Make sure you were okay. Protect you from having to fight in court. An allowance, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Like I was a child. Like a stranger he felt sorry for. Ryan wiped his face with his sleeve. How did he fake it? I asked. My voice was eerily calm now. There was a man. Homeless. Terminally ill. Lung cancer. No family except a niece he hadn't seen in years. Dad paid him, paid the niece too. They staged the accident on I-94. The man died in the hospital under Dad's name. The body was badly damaged. Casket stayed closed. No one questioned it. I remembered the phone call from the police. The kind female officer who said, "I'm so sorry, ma'am." Ryan arriving at the house within the hour, insisting I not go to the morgue. The funeral, me sobbing into a tissue while people held my hands and told me how strong I was. "You let me bury a stranger," I said. "Yes. You watched me fall apart for 6 months." He broke down completely then, shoulders heaving, face buried in his hands. "I didn't know how to stop it once it started," he sobbed. "I thought if enough time passed, you'd heal. That it would be kinder this way. That you'd never have to know the truth." "Kinder?" I laughed then, a short, bitter sound with no humor in it. "You stole my right to the truth. You replaced my grief with a lie. You let me mourn a man who was still breathing." He couldn't speak anymore. Just cried. I closed my eyes. Breathed slowly, carefully, the way I'd learned in yoga classes years ago when stress from the business kept me awake. "Take me home," I said. "Mom, we need to talk about this. Take me home." He started the car. Neither of us spoke on the drive back. When we pulled into my driveway, I got out without looking at him. He called after me, voice raw. "Mom, please." I didn't answer. I walked inside, closed the door softly behind me, and locked it. In the darkness of my house, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at the life I thought I'd lived. 41 years of loyalty. Of compromise. Of believing in the man beside me every night. It had all been a performance. And now that I knew the truth, one thing was clear. I was done being the woman who cried in silence. Whatever came next, it would not be forgiveness. It would be reckoning. The drive home felt endless. Streetlights streaked across the windshield like tears I refused to shed. Ryan kept glancing at me, mouth opening and closing as if he wanted to say more, but every time he tried, the words died in his throat. I stared straight ahead, hands folded in my lap, breathing in slow, measured pulls. The kind of breathing I learned in a yoga class years ago when Victor's long absences first started keeping me awake at night. Back then I thought it was work stress. Now I knew better. When we pulled into the driveway, I got out without a word. He called after me, "Mom, please," but I didn't turn around. I walked inside, closed the door softly, turned the deadbolt, and leaned against it for a long moment while the house settled around me in silence. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next. Not the one after. Something inside me had shifted, grief had burned itself out like a fire left untended, leaving behind only cold, steady ash and a clarity so sharp it hurt to look at. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, album still open, phone photos glowing on the screen. I didn't pace. I didn't scream. I just sat and let the facts settle into place like stones at the bottom of a lake. Fake death. Stolen identity. Hidden assets. Forged signatures. A purchased body. A son who knew and stayed silent. This wasn't betrayal in the way people usually mean it. This was a crime. A calculated, premeditated crime. By morning I knew what I had to do. I took a long, scalding shower, letting the hot water pound against my skin until it turned pink. I dressed carefully, not in the loose sweaters and yoga pants I'd lived in for months, but in the tailored navy blazer and white blouse I used to wear to parent-teacher conferences and business dinners. Clothes that made me feel like myself again. Not the widow everyone pitied. Not the broken woman they whispered about. Me. In the mirror I saw someone older, yes, lines deeper around the eyes, silver threading through my hair, but sharper. Awake. Someone who had finally stopped waiting for answers and started demanding them. I drove downtown to the Loop. A building I'd passed 100 times and never noticed. 3rd floor. Frosted glass door with a simple black sign, private investigations, confidential. The man behind the desk was in his early 60s. Thinning gray hair. Sharp blue eyes behind rimless glasses. He looked up when I entered and studied me without speaking for a long moment. I sat down without waiting to be invited. "I need to find someone," I said. "Is he missing or hiding?" "Hiding. And legally dead." That got his full attention. I told him the facts. No emotion. No tears. Just the timeline, the accident on I-94, the closed casket, the new name Michael Harlan, the house in Rogers Park, the woman named Claudia, the children calling him Grandpa. I showed him the photos I'd taken, blurry ones and clear ones. The license plate. The address. He listened without interrupting, pen moving steadily across a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond infidelity. This is identity fraud, wire fraud, asset concealment, possibly conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Federal-level crimes. It'll take time. It'll cost money. I can pay, I said. I want proof. Bank records. Property records. Fake documents. Everything documented. Proven. Not suspected. He named a number. It was substantial. I didn't flinch. I wrote the check. I want the truth in writing, I said. Every transaction. Every signature. Every phone call. He smiled faintly, professional respect, not warmth. I can do that. Over the next week I watched from the edges of my own life. I returned to the quiet street in Rogers Park at different hours, early morning, late afternoon, dusk. I wore hats. Sunglasses. A different coat each time. I parked in different spots, sometimes half a block away, sometimes across the street, always out of obvious sight. I learned his schedule. He left every morning at 7:15 sharp, briefcase in hand, coat over arm. He returned around 6:30 in the evening, sometimes stopping at the corner market for milk or bread. Weekends were for the children, park trips, bike rides, backyard barbecues. Sundays he wore a navy blazer and tie. They all walked to the little church 2 blocks over. To the neighbors, he was a good man. Quiet. Helpful. The kind who waved first and remembered names. I learned the name he used now, Michael Harlan. Part-time logistics consultant for small firms. Modest income on paper. I watched Claudia touch his arm the way I used to when we walked the dog in the evenings. I watched him smile at her with the ease of someone who believed his past was safely buried. It wasn't. The investigator called 7 days later. I have enough for a full report. You should come in. The folder he handed me was thick. Heavy. Real. Fake birth certificate issued in 2003, years after Victor's real one. Bank accounts opened under Michael Harlan with nearly $1.8 million transferred in the months before the accident. Utility bills and tax records tying him to 2 households for over 2 decades. And then the last page, phone records showing regular calls between Victor and Ryan before the crash, after the funeral, during the months I thought I was completely alone. Ryan hadn't just known. He'd stayed involved. I closed the folder slowly. Thank you, I said. As I walked out of that office into the bright Chicago afternoon, something settled inside me like a stone dropping into deep water. This was no longer about rage or revenge. It was about dignity. About truth. About refusing to be erased from my own life. They thought I would mourn forever. They thought my silence meant weakness. They were wrong. The storm hadn't passed. It had only just begun. I didn't confront Ryan right away. That was the hardest part. Every instinct screamed to drive back to his house, throw the folder of evidence on his kitchen table, and demand answers until my voice gave out. To watch his face crumple again and again until he admitted every lie he'd helped keep alive. But anger rushes. It burns hot and fast and leaves ashes. Strategy waits. It builds slowly, quietly, until the trap is set so perfectly the target walks right into it. I chose patience. For the next 3 days I moved through my house like a shadow. I read the investigator's report every night at the kitchen table, under the single lamp, committing every date, every dollar amount, every forged signature to memory. Bank transfers routed through offshore accounts before circling back to Ryan's name. Property records showing a second mortgage on the Rogers Park house signed by Michael Harlan with Victor's handwriting quirks. Phone logs proving Ryan spoke to his father at least twice a week after the funeral, calls I never knew about while I was crying myself to sleep. I didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried up. What remained was cold, steady clarity, like frost on a windowpane after a long night. On the 4th morning I made an appointment with an attorney. Not the family lawyer who handled our wills and the house closing. A fraud specialist downtown, sharp suit, sharper eyes, no wasted words. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and expensive leather. She reviewed the folder without speaking for 20 minutes. Then looked up. What you're describing is a criminal conspiracy, she said. Your husband committed identity fraud, wire fraud, asset concealment. Your son aided and abetted, benefited financially. You're entitled to full restitution. There's strong ground for criminal charges, forgery, financial exploitation of an elder, possibly insurance fraud if any policies were involved. I felt a strange calm listening to her. The same calm I used to feel when I balanced the checkbook and knew every penny was accounted for. What do you need from me? I asked. A confession would help, she said. Especially from your son. We also need proof of asset transfers and forged authorizations. If we have that, the case is airtight. I already knew where those documents were. Ryan kept a private office at the main warehouse, locked filing cabinets, old laptop he used for personal business. He'd given me a spare key years ago in case of emergency. I'd never used it. Until now. But first, I needed him to talk. To record him talking. I called him that afternoon. Mom, he answered on the first ring. Are you okay? I've been so worried. I've called a dozen times. I'm tired, I said, letting my voice soften just enough. I don't want to fight anymore. I just need to understand everything so I can move forward. Relief flooded his voice. Of course, Mom. Anything you want to know. I'll tell you everything. Let's have lunch tomorrow, I said. Somewhere quiet. He agreed without hesitation. That night I placed a small digital recorder in my purse, the one I used to use for book club notes. I practiced keeping my hands steady, my questions curious instead of accusing. I rehearsed until my voice sounded like a grieving mother seeking closure, not a woman building a case. At the restaurant, a quiet Italian place in Lincoln Square we used to go to as a family, I let him talk. I ordered the same pasta Victor always ordered. I listened. When did the plan start? How was the money moved? Who signed what? Where did the proceeds from the early asset sales go? Each answer came easily now, unguarded, confident that I was still his mother, still safe, still the woman who would forgive anything because that's what mothers do. He didn't notice the recorder blinking red in my open purse. He didn't notice that every word was sealing his fate. While we ate, my attorney and the investigator were already moving. With the initial evidence I'd provided, they secured emergency access to financial records through civil discovery motions. The transactions told the rest of the story: forged signatures on transfer documents, unauthorized sales of warehouse equipment, funds wired into accounts Ryan controlled. By the time lunch ended and we hugged awkwardly in the parking lot, the trap was closed. That afternoon my attorney filed the formal complaint with the district attorney's office. Fraud. Forgery. Financial exploitation of an elder. Identity theft. 2 hours later she called me. The case has been accepted. Warrants are being prepared. I sat alone in my living room when the call ended. The house was quiet. No music. No television. Just the ticking clock on the wall and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago, crying into an empty pillow, begging a dead man to come back in the dark. That woman would not have survived this moment. But I was no longer her. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt resolved. The truth was no longer mine alone. Soon it would belong to the law. The call came at dawn. My attorney's number lit up the screen. I answered before the second ring. They've issued the warrants, she said. Your son was taken into custody early this morning. No resistance. He's being processed now. I closed my eyes. Let the words settle into the quiet room like stones dropping into still water. Across the city, Ryan was being handcuffed in his driveway. Rights read in calm, practiced tones. Led to a squad car while neighbors watched from windows and porches. The same neighbors who'd brought casseroles after the funeral. The same neighbors who'd hugged me and said how strong I was. I felt no rush of victory. No triumph. Only inevitability. An hour later my phone began to ring. Ryan's number over and over. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from his wife, short, shaking. What did you do? I set the phone face down on the kitchen table and made coffee. The routine felt strange. The same mug Victor used to use. The same coffee grounds he always bought too strong. I drank it black, standing at the window, watching the sun climb over the rooftops. By noon the family calls started. Cousins. Old friends from the church group. People who'd stood beside me at the funeral, who'd held my hands and told me time would heal. Now they were calling to ask questions they didn't really want answered. I ignored them all. At 2 p.m. my attorney called again. There's something else, she said. The identity he's using, Michael Harlan, is being formally invalidated. The accounts under that name have been frozen. He has nowhere to hide anymore. The DA is moving fast. That was the moment I knew I needed to see him. Not to argue. Not to explain. Not to beg for answers. To end it. I drove back to the soft gray 2-flat in Rogers Park. This time I parked directly in front. No hiding. No watching from shadows. I walked up the short path, past the geraniums in the window boxes, and rang the bell. Claudia opened the door. She looked at me with cautious politeness, the kind reserved for strangers selling something. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Michael," I said. "It's urgent." She hesitated, then nodded. "He's in the backyard." She stepped aside. He was standing near the wooden fence, pruning shears in hand, sleeves rolled up, working on a rose bush. For a second he didn't see me. Then he turned. Recognition was immediate. "Sophia," he whispered. I held out the envelope. Thick manila. Legal documents inside. "These are for you," I said calmly. "You need to read them." His hands trembled as he took the papers. He opened the flap. Eyes moved quickly across the first page: warrant summary, asset freeze notice, fraud charges listed in black and white. The color drained from his face. "What is this?" he asked. "What did you do?" "I did nothing," I replied. "I told the truth." He looked past me toward the house. "Does she know?" "She knows now." Claudia appeared in the doorway behind him. Confusion on her face. He didn't answer her unspoken question. "I'm his wife," I said directly to her. His legal wife. We were married for 41 years. The silence that followed was unbearable. Claudia stared at him. "You said you were widowed," she whispered. "You said you had no one left." "He had someone," I said. "Me." Victor's knees buckled. He dropped to the grass. "Sophia, please," he said hoarsely. "I can explain." "No," I said. "You've explained enough. You chose deception. You chose theft. You chose to erase me from your life while I mourned you." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing closer. "They're coming," he said. "Yes." I turned to leave. "Sophia," he called after me. "For the years we shared. For what we were." I stopped. But I didn't turn around. "What we were was real to me," I said. "That's why you'll never understand what you destroyed." I walked away as the sirens grew louder. I didn't look back when the police pulled up. I didn't watch them lead him away in handcuffs. I didn't stay to see Claudia's face when the truth finally hit her. Daylight had reached the truth. And nothing built on lies survives the light. I drove home slowly. The city blurred past, Lakeshore Drive, the skyline, the lake glittering under the afternoon sun. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked different. Not haunted. Not empty. Just quiet. I walked inside. Closed the door. Locked it. For the first time in 6 months, I felt the weight begin to lift. Not all at once. Not completely. But enough to breathe. Victor died 3 weeks later. Not in a dramatic courtroom scene. Not in handcuffs during a dramatic arrest. A heart attack in the holding facility while awaiting formal charges. The call came early in the morning, calm, procedural, as if the voice on the other end was informing me of a missed dentist appointment. "He passed at 5:20 a.m., the officer said. "You're listed as next of kin." For a long moment I said nothing. The kitchen was still dark, only the glow from the coffee maker lighting the counter. I stared at the mug in my hand, the one Victor used to use, the one with the chipped handle he refused to throw away because it's lucky. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel sorrow. What I felt was distance, as if the man they were describing no longer belonged to my life in any meaningful way. "Cremate him," I said finally. "Scatter the ashes over Lake Michigan." No service. No ceremony. There was a brief pause on the line. "Are you certain, ma'am?" "Yes." He had already taken enough from me. He wasn't taking one more performance. The legal process moved forward without him. The fake identity, Michael Harlan, was formally invalidated by the court. The accounts frozen. The assets hidden, sold, or transferred under false authority were recovered and redistributed according to the original estate documents and fraud restitution laws. What was stolen came back to where it belonged, not out of mercy, but out of law. Ryan accepted a plea deal. The charges were serious: financial fraud, forgery, aiding and abetting identity theft, but he cooperated fully. He received a sentence of 3 years in a minimum security facility, with the possibility of parole after 18 months for good behavior. Long enough to understand the cost of his choices. Not long enough to destroy his life completely. We spoke once after the sentencing, through a glass partition in the visitation room at the county jail. It wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. I love you, I told him. But love doesn't erase consequences. He nodded. For the first time, he didn't argue. Didn't make excuses. Didn't beg. I know, Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. Months passed. The house felt lighter somehow. I redecorated, not to erase memories, but to claim space. I replaced the heavy drapes with lighter curtains that let the sun in. I painted the bedroom walls a soft sage green instead of the beige Victor preferred. I bought new pillows for the bed so I no longer smelled him when I slept. I returned to the hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. Reading books I actually wanted to read instead of the ones he recommended. Walking along the lakefront trail at dawn, watching the sun rise over the water. Meeting friends for coffee without apologizing for taking time for myself. I laughed again. Real laughs, not the polite ones I'd forced for months. I slept through the night without waking in tears. Grief hadn't destroyed me. Silence had. And truth had saved me. One afternoon I drove to Oakwood Cemetery. The stranger's grave was still there, Victor's name on the stone. I stood for a few minutes, not to mourn, but to close a door. That grave didn't hold my husband. It held the innocence I'd lost. The trust I'd given freely. The woman who believed love was enough to make someone stay honest. I left without looking back. Today my life is quieter. Smaller in some ways, fewer social obligations, fewer family gatherings. Stronger in all the ways that matter. I no longer confuse loyalty with self-erasure. I no longer believe love requires silence in the face of lies. I learned that dignity isn't granted by marriage or blood. It's claimed the moment you refuse to be lied to any longer. And I learned that even after betrayal, even after years of deception, it is never too late to choose yourself. That choice changes everything. The lake still glitters outside my window every morning. The city still hums with life. And I am still here, older, scarred, but finally free. Months passed after the arrests, after the court dates, after the final papers were signed and the last loose thread of Victor's double life was cut away. The house felt different. Not haunted anymore. Not empty in the same aching way. Just mine. I redecorated slowly, piece by piece. Not to erase him, some memories are too woven into the walls for that, but to claim the space as my own again. I replaced the heavy burgundy drapes with sheer white curtains that let sunlight flood the living room in the mornings. I painted the bedroom walls a soft sage green, the color of new leaves in spring, instead of the neutral beige Victor always preferred because it was timeless. I bought new pillows for the bed, fluffy, white, smelling of lavender instead of Old Spice. I slept through the night without waking to reach for a hand that wasn't there. I returned to the small joys I'd abandoned years ago. Reading novels late into the night without apologizing for the lamp being on. Walking the lakefront trail at dawn, watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan, the water turning from steel gray to molten gold. Meeting friends for coffee at the little cafe on Clark Street, real conversations, real laughter, no more polite smiles to hide the ache. I laughed again. Not the careful, measured laughs I'd forced for months after the funeral. Real laughs, ones that surprised me, that started low in my chest and rolled out freely. People asked how I survived it. How I could possibly move forward after such betrayal. I didn't survive by pretending it didn't happen. I survived by facing it fully, every lie, every forged signature, every whispered phone call between father and son while I cried alone in the dark. Therapy helped. Not to erase the pain, but to understand it. To name it. To stop blaming myself for trusting too much, for loving too deeply, for believing the man I married was capable of honesty. I learned that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Love without honesty isn't love. It's performance. Ryan writes letters from prison. Short ones at first, apologies that felt rehearsed. Then longer ones, regrets, memories of childhood summers at the Wisconsin cabin, admissions of how afraid he'd been to lose his father's approval. He says he's reading books on accountability. He says he's sorry every time. I read them. I don't reply yet. Forgiveness might come someday. Trust never will. Claudia filed for divorce from Michael the week after his arrest. The marriage was invalidated anyway, built on fraud from the start. The children are innocent. They didn't choose any of this. I don't hate them. I don't hate her. I hate the lies that wrapped around all of us like vines. I started volunteering at a women's shelter in Uptown. Twice a week I sit with women who've escaped deception, financial abuse, emotional manipulation, hidden second lives. I listen. I don't give advice unless asked. I just sit with them in the pain until they can breathe again. It's not revenge. It's purpose. One evening I sat on the small balcony of my new condo downtown, smaller than the old house, brighter, with a view of the lake and the skyline. The city lights glittered below like scattered diamonds. The wind off the water was cool, carrying the faint scent of summer's end. I thought about the woman in the grocery aisle 6 months ago. The jar shattering. The world tilting. The moment everything I believed cracked open. That woman is gone. In her place is someone scarred, yes. Wiser. Stronger. Free. I no longer wait for permission to live. I no longer apologize for taking up space. I no longer confuse loyalty with self-erasure. The lake still sparkles outside my window every morning. The city still hums with life, sirens, laughter, traffic, possibility. And I am still here, older, quieter, but finally whole. If you're listening and you've been betrayed, by a partner, by family, by someone you trusted with your heart, know this. Your pain is valid. Your grief is real. But it doesn't get the final word. The truth hurts. Lies destroy slowly. Choose truth. Set boundaries. Claim your space. Rebuild at your own pace. You are worth it. Never too late to choose yourself. That choice changes everything. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't the discovery in that grocery aisle. It wasn't gathering evidence or watching the warrants execute. It wasn't even the confrontation in the backyard with Claudia watching the truth shatter her world. The hardest part was realizing the love I'd given for 41 years wasn't returned the same way. I built a home. I raised a son. I supported dreams, Victor's business, Ryan's ambitions, our shared future. I forgave absences. I believed promises whispered in the dark. I compromised when it hurt. I stayed loyal when it was lonely. Victor built 2 lives. One with me, public, familiar, safe. One without, secret, exciting, selfish. When the truth finally broke open, it didn't destroy me. It freed me. I didn't survive by pretending the pain never happened. I survived by facing it fully, every lie, every forged signature, every whispered phone call between father and son while I cried alone in the dark. Friends still ask how I did it. How I could possibly move forward after such betrayal. I didn't move forward by erasing the past. I moved forward by naming it. By refusing to let it define me. Therapy helped. Not to forget, but to understand. To stop blaming myself for trusting too much, for loving too deeply, for believing the man I married was capable of honesty. I learned that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Love without honesty isn't love. It's performance. Ryan writes letters from prison. Short ones at first, apologies that felt rehearsed. Then longer ones, regrets, memories of childhood summers at the Wisconsin cabin, admissions of how afraid he'd been to lose his father's approval. He says he's reading books on accountability. He says he's sorry every time. I read them. I don't reply yet. Forgiveness might come someday. Trust never will. Some bridges burn too completely to rebuild. Claudia filed for divorce from Michael the week after his arrest. The marriage was invalidated anyway, built on fraud from the start. The children are innocent. They didn't choose any of this. I don't hate them. I don't hate her. I hate the lies that wrapped around all of us like vines, choking what could have been honest. I started volunteering at a women's shelter in Uptown. Twice a week I sit with women who've escaped deception, financial abuse, emotional manipulation, hidden second lives. I listen. I don't give advice unless asked. I just sit with them in the pain until they can breathe again. It's not revenge. It's purpose. One evening I sat on the small balcony of my new condo downtown, smaller than the old house, brighter, with a view of the lake and the skyline. The city lights glittered below like scattered diamonds. The wind off the water was cool, carrying the faint scent of summer's end. I thought about the woman in the grocery aisle 6 months ago. The jar shattering. The world tilting. The moment everything I believed cracked open. That woman is gone. In her place is someone scarred, yes. Wiser. Stronger. Free. I no longer wait for permission to live. I no longer apologize for taking up space. I no longer confuse loyalty with self-erasure. The lake still sparkles outside my window every morning. The city still hums with life, sirens, laughter, traffic, possibility. And I am still here, older, quieter, but finally whole. If you're listening and you've been betrayed by a partner, by family, by someone you trusted with your heart, know this. Your pain is valid. Your grief is real. But it doesn't get the final word. The truth hurts. Lies destroy slowly. Choose truth. Set boundaries. Claim your space. Rebuild at your own pace. You are worth it. Never too late to choose yourself. That choice changes everything. That's my story. I buried a man I loved for 41 years. 6 months later, I found him alive in a grocery aisle, living a second life with a second family. My own son helped him disappear. They built a plan around deception, fraud, and silence, thinking I would mourn forever, that my grief would keep me small, that truth could stay buried forever. They were wrong. I didn't break. I didn't shatter. I woke up. The truth hurt more than any lie ever could. It cut deep, through vows, through memories, through the quiet promises we made in the dark. But lies destroy slowly. They erode trust, dignity, self-worth, piece by piece until you don't recognize yourself anymore. Truth, even when it bleeds, sets you free. I chose truth. I chose evidence over emotion. I chose strategy over rage. I chose justice over forgiveness, at least for now. The law took over from there. Warrants. Freezes. Plea deals. Sentences. A fake identity erased. Stolen assets returned. A grave that never held my husband, only the illusion of one. Victor died in a holding cell before the trial could begin. A heart attack. No dramatic courtroom moment. No final apology. Just a quiet end to a life built on secrets. I didn't attend a service. I didn't scatter ashes myself. I let the authorities handle it. He had already taken enough from me. Ryan serves his time. He writes letters. I read them. I haven't replied yet. Forgiveness is a possibility someday. Trust is not. Claudia and the children are rebuilding. They didn't choose the lie either. I don't hate them. I don't carry anger toward them. Anger toward the innocent only poisons the holder. Today, at 62, my life is quieter. Smaller in some ways, no big family gatherings, no shared holidays pretending everything is fine. Stronger in every way that matters. I wake up to sunlight, not silence. I make coffee for one, and enjoy it. I walk the lakefront trail at dawn, watching the city come alive, feeling the wind off Lake Michigan on my face. I read books I actually want to read. I travel when I feel like it, Italy next spring, solo, no apologies. I laugh freely. I cry when I need to, rarely now. I sleep through the night. I volunteer at the women's shelter twice a week. I sit with women who've escaped deception, financial abuse, emotional manipulation, hidden second lives. I don't give advice unless asked. I just sit with them in the pain until they can breathe again. It's not revenge. It's purpose. The condo downtown is small, bright, mine. A view of the lake and skyline. No heavy memories in the walls. Just space to be. If you're listening and you've been betrayed, by a partner, by family, by someone you trusted with your heart, hear this. Your pain is valid. Your grief is real. But it doesn't get the final word. The truth hurts. Lies destroy slowly. Choose truth. Set boundaries, even with blood. Claim your space. Rebuild at your own pace. You are worth it. Never too late to choose yourself. That choice changes everything. I no longer wait for permission to live. I no longer apologize for taking up space. I no longer confuse loyalty with self-erasure. The lake still sparkles every morning. The city still hums with life, sirens, laughter, traffic, possibility. And I am still here, older, scarred, quieter, but finally whole. Thank you for staying with me through this story. It wasn't easy to tell. It wasn't easy to live. But it's real. If it resonated, if it reminded you of your own pain, your own strength, your own need to choose truth, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, stories of betrayal, survival, and reclaiming dignity. Share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. You matter. Your worth isn't defined by who stays. It's defined by how you rise after they leave. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next story.